Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Welcome to the 2022 Project Orchids first set of updates. This will be a set of 3 videos. Each video has 3 orchids in it, and they're the same 3 orchids that we did in the initial looks back in March. For those of you who missed it or are interested in a refresher as to what the plants looked like back in March, there will be an info card coming up in the top right hand corner, which will take you back to that initial look for the first part, for the first 3 orchids, the 3 orchids we're going to look at in this update 1. So that's the way the Project Orchids work. So in this video we will look at the 3 video clips that I took back in March, and they will be followed by an update video of what those plants look like now, chat from me about my expectations, did we achieve what I wanted in those first 2 months of the project, and what I would expect from the next 2 months. So, as we say, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, orchid number 1 is Dendrobium Nestor, and as you can see it doesn't really fit on the backdrop very well. The backdrop is taller than it is wide, and that's the shape of this orchid. It's tall and not very wide, so it's not going to... Okay, we've got gaps at the end of the backdrop. Tough, that's all I can do. Now basically Nestor is a primary cross. It's a cross between Purpurata and an osmum, I believe. And as such it needs a much drier, slightly cooler, very bright winter rest to bloom at its best. But the first thing you need to appreciate with these types of long cane orchids is to bloom at their best you need to grow the long canes. That's your job in the growing season. So we're working back to front here, and if you have a look at the canes I grew last year, I didn't do that job very well, and the reason was there was a break. This plant got remounted, and as such it had some major root disturbance, which basically stunted it for that particular year. You can see the normal length of the canes here, and these are the 2 canes from last year. This little one and this one a bit longer. But they weren't even long enough to gain enough weight to become pendulous, which is its natural growth habit. Now this little plant here was a kiki that was taken off. Already that's showing signs of a new growth. That's good. So that means that will grow and produce a cane. It probably won't be full length, but it will also produce roots. That's the important bit. And that's the goal for this plant this year, is to establish a decent root system like it had before, and get some new growths going. We may only get 1, we may get 2. So basically that's the expectations for this plant. But the first thing we can expect is for it to bloom. Now it always blooms on the previous year's growths, and they are normally leafless by the time that happens, which is virtually true apart from this one, which is just hanging on for dear life. So we have got nubbins progressing on the canes here. The nubbins appear opposite where the leaf was, so alternately down the cane. Very rarely the absolute full length of the cane, but if you look at my previous efforts, you've got nubbins from here right back to here, whereas this time on this shorter cane they only go back to here, and I don't believe we're going to get a good blooming this year. But we have got a few nubbins on this cane as well, so we will get blooms on both canes. It's not going to be a spectacle like it was last year, but what I'm after this year is new growths, new root system and progress. And there are 2 schools of thought with these types of orchids. Some say you shouldn't start feeding or watering until the new growths start. If you do that and it blooms prior to that, then you will drain the resources of the plant. Some also say there are plenty of enough resources in the plant to be able to bloom without starting the feeding. I like to think that by starting the feeding and watering once the buds progress, these are not that I'm not feeding this one yet. This is getting a dribble of water now and again. It's still resting as far as I'm concerned. These little nubbins will eventually push away from the cane. So at the moment they look alongside. They will eventually turn around like that, and then you'll see the buds forming at the end. That's the point where I start feeding. And we will do so, and we'll see what we get. There's a tiny little kiki on the end of that cane that I don't think is going to grow, because that's the cane I'm going to take off. Yeah, there is no life left in that. It's dry and shriveled, and it's ugly. So this one will come off. The other four will stay. They are reserves. So I thought I saw a bud then. They are reserves, so they will stay and feed and store nutrients and hydration for the plant. Yeah, they will help it grow this year by supplying reserves. If you get a plant like this that ends up with too many of the canes like this, you end up losing some of your vigor for the plant, because you can only put so much nutrients into the plant. Yeah. And if a lot of those keep topping up this area, they're not being used to grow. So there comes a time when the older canes need thinning out. On this plant, not yet. Okay, so expectations for this: hopefully new growths both from the kiki and from the main plant, the mother plant, and a new set of roots from both. And hopefully this year we get full-size canes again. So that's number one. Okay, as we are now then, beginning of May, just into May, the blooms didn't quite make it. But I didn't want to delay this group 1, update 1 any longer, because I don't want it dragging on basically. The goal was to get new growth or growths and a new root system and some blooms. So as far as that is concerned, we do have 2 new growths. So goal number 1 exceeded, because I was only expecting 1. Mainly due to its weakened state from its disturbance last year. So we've got our 2 new growths. My job now is to push those hard all through this season and get the canes this long, not only this long. Nonetheless, we do have some blooms. Oh, look at the colour inside there. Not quite fully open, but you'll get to see them. What's today? That'll be in every bloom on the 8th, I would imagine. There's no sign of life at the base of the keiki yet, so that's still to go. So goals achieved, 2 new growths, better than hoped, but the new root systems haven't started yet. I'm hoping to get new roots on both the keiki and the main plant, but now that I've got 2 new growths, those roots will definitely come, and we'll have the lovely fragrance off of these blooms. The nubbins on the smaller cane from last year I don't think are going to progress, because they would have done it by now, so I think that cane is just basically stalled. It's not going to do anything. So we're stuck with these few blooms this year, and well, we'll have to wait till next year for some more, because it's only a once a year jobby this. Anyway, job now for the rest of the season: push those canes hard, those new growths, and establish a new root system, which I think we should be okay with. Okay, plant number 2 is an Aliceara. So one of the something in the Oncidium alliance this time, an intergeneric. What went into this, I haven't got a clue. And the chances are it would be difficult to find out, and I just can't be bothered. All I know is that it's an intergeneric. It may have Oncidium in it, I don't know, but with the reclassifications of so many in the Oncidium alliance, names like Aliceara might not even be true anymore, because if a component part has been reclassified, then the name doesn't work, because it becomes meaningless. But It's an intergeneric, that's all I need to know. And I've been trying to rescue this plant for about 3 years, which is why I've picked on it, because it does look like it's responding at long last. Now, what we've got are some reasonably plump bulbs, many leaves, and quite a few new growths. If you look round the back of the plant, there's 2 new growths there. And coming round here, we've got another new growth pushing on quite nicely. And then right up the side here, we have another one. So we've got 4 new growths on this plant at the moment. And those will produce roots. And therein lies something that must be done this time round. The moss is old and tired and is zombie moss. Therefore, after the age that this has been on this mount, that zombie moss has gone off. It's probably quite acidic. Now, luckily, it dries fast because it's on a mount, so it can't be doing as much damage to the root system as it would be in a pot. Nonetheless, the new roots that are going to come from these new growths, I want in some new live moss. So I will be doing some work on this plant. I will leave it on its mount, probably. Decision not made yet. And I will tease all of this old moss off and then surround the base of the plant, up in between the pseudo bulbs, round the back with some nice live moss strapped on in such a way that the roots will go straight into it. So that's the plan for this one. And I really would like to see some blooms from at least one of these new growths. As I say, it hasn't been doing very well for some time now. Hopefully this is the year it picks up and gets going again. So plans for this one: deal with the moss, set up a decent base for the new roots to get into with live moss, and get this one to grow and hopefully to bloom. So that's plant number 2. Okay, plant number 2 in group 1 is the Aliceara. And in March I decided that I was going to do something about the old moss on here and either take it off its mount and remount it or do something with it. And have we done it? No. Not a light. However, getting it down to film it now will make me do it because I'd forgotten, basically. It had just slipped my mind. So what we've got here is all of the new growths are progressing nicely now. These were the 2 little ones up the back. They've pushed on nicely. I'll have to pick this up, I think that's the easiest way. And then coming round the front, we've got another one that pushed out there. I don't think that one was there last time round. The larger one at the front is pushing on, and then there's the one tucked in behind there. So we had 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we have now got 5, so we've grown another one. But the most important thing, if you look carefully, the new roots are just starting. Yeah, at the base of the new, or at least at the base of those 2 new growths. That means roots on all of these new growths are imminent. Yeah? So whatever I'm going to do with this, now is the time. And then those new roots will progress into whatever I choose to put them and acclimatise accordingly. So at this particular point with those nice plump bulbs, what I do with the old root system won't make a lot of difference to the plant, because it's going to get new roots on all of these new growths. And hopefully the next goal is to do what I'm supposed to do with this and get these roots into something, and then hopefully get some blooms on one of these growths. We'll see how it goes, but at least it's growing. Okay, and plant number 3, the last one in this group, Laelia purpurata variety striata. A large Laelia. I've got this one potted in bark in a holy clay pot. This one suffered from the root issues with the cattleyas, where I tried to treat them for scale and got it totally wrong and destroyed a lot of my root systems. So many of my cattleyas are in a state of recovery. This one didn't fare too bad as far as the roots were concerned, but nonetheless it was still a problem. And what happened with this was it lost a lead. So it ended up not blooming. So this was the lead that it grew, this large one here, but no sheath, therefore no blooms. It started this growth back at the beginning of the winter, and it got to about there and stalled completely, and I didn't believe it was going to grow. Well, it has decided to grow. It is pushing on now. Whether it gets up to full size or not, I don't know. We've got signs of root growth at the base of that particular growth. Then a second plant, this is in two pieces, is this piece here, which is basically smaller and has less strength in it because it's got a pseudo bulb with no leaf here that is an odd shape as well. So this one is also an odd shape, but it has a good leaf. And then this one, not too bad. And then what was the new growth at that time, pushed on, very, very thin at the base, not very strong, but did produce a leaf. Now in theory, this should produce a new growth. And with the new growth, like on the other one, we should get some new roots when it gets to about half size, because this piece hasn't got very good roots. But it has got some branching roots down here. There is root activity just starting on this plant, only just, literally in the last week or so. So what I want from this one is for this growth to mature to a proper size. Whether I'll get that or not, I don't know. And then on this growth, this other plant, it is a separate piece, I'd like a new growth to push out and again get up to a reasonable size. Both of those new growths, should they both exist, one does, the other one doesn't yet, but hopefully will do, I don't expect to bloom. These need to be a good, strong, reasonable sized plant. With a good backup of pseudo bulbs and decent sized leaves to actually bloom. And in addition to that, these are high light orchids. These do like quite a lot of light. They also would prefer not to get too hot. A lot of the Laelias come into that category. They'll put up and tolerate with the heat, but often it will slow their growth because they transpire too fast in the heat, so they lose their hydration. And if it's not replaced, then they semi-stall, shall we say. So to keep these going, they need reasonable humidity, good light, and constant hydration during growth. Yeah? And try not to get them too hot. So that's my hopes for this one. It will recover, unlike some of the Cattleyas which were actually lost. This one should recover. But it could be a couple of years before it recovers enough to actually bloom again. Because although it looks collectively like a reasonably substantial plant, it is two pieces. So it's only two half plants, yeah? You see what I mean? So it's not a substantially strong plant. It needs to get, each piece now needs to get back to something like this whole. So a couple of new growths possibly on both before we see some blooms. So that's that one. Okay, and the last one in this group is my big strappy Laelia. And I wasn't expecting a huge amount from this. All I was hoping in this particular case is that it would start to grow, and in which case would generate some new roots, because the old roots are not good. That's a long story. So what we have in this pot are two plants. One starts here and heads off over there. The other one starts here and heads towards us. That's the weak one. And guess what? The weak one's got the new growth. So this little piece here is going to produce a new growth, which hopefully will get some roots going on it. Because effectively it's a piece with 3 bulbs and 2 leaves. So there's not much of a piece there. So expecting blooms off of this particular piece would be just wishful thinking. That's not going to happen. Now on the other piece we've got quite a few more bulbs and quite a few more leaves. But what we have is a new growth that's spindly. And these black marks I'm not happy with, but they've been there a long time and they're not getting any worse. They're not spreading, it's just there, whatever it is. And this growth here was the new one, and it's smaller. Yeah? So somewhere here should be a new growth soon, but it's not happening yet. So there's a little bit of root activity on the existing roots, not much, but then a lot of them are down in the pot, so we wouldn't see. So hopefully on this particular plant we would get a new growth, and then hopefully on the other little plant here the new growth will push on and create a reasonable size bulb. I doubt if it'll be full size, but with it should come some roots. So it's hanging in there. I won't say it's progressing at a phenomenal rate, because it's not, but it's got the longer days now, and this one in particular doesn't need heat. I won't say it's a cooler grower than a lot of Cattleya types, but it can be found in cooler places. So it should still do okay, even though it hasn't got the heat that it had around the old grow room. So we'll see how that one pushes on as the season progresses. Okay, so there we go then. That's. I hope now you can sort of appreciate better the new format for this year, because I've only done it in words up until now. So I presume some of you have appreciated now that we've got the video from March, followed by the video from today, and that's update 1. So what's update 2 going to look like? The video from March, update 1, and update 2. That's what you're thinking, and that's not what's going to happen. What I'm going to do with all of the updates until we get to the end of the year is only bring forward the previous video. So whatever it is now, May, June, when we get to July, 2 months time, you'll get the one from now, today, May, followed by the new one in July. So you'll always get a pair until we get to the very end, at which point it gets a bit lengthy because I'll pull all the video clips together for each plant. I might even do those as individual videos. We haven't got there yet. We've got many months of growing and things to do. So that is the new format. That's the way it's going to work. Previous video followed by current video. Because they're all video clips, this just makes life so much easier for me, so much easier. And I hope you still enjoy the format, because it is totally different to the previous format where we were working with stills and I had to do a soundtrack. None of that now, so it's just video clips to be kept behind. So that's group 1 done, update 1. Group 2, update 1 will follow shortly, and not long after that will be group 3, update 1, and then we'll put them all away again for a couple of months. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, on the end of this video I'll put some end screens for those who want to go and look at some other stuff to do with Project Orchids. I haven't decided what will go there, but a couple will pop up at the end. One of them will be the playlist for the 2022 Project Orchids, which contains all the videos so far, and another one which I haven't chosen yet. Be a surprise. See you next time. Bye for now.